So today I wanted to talk about this covering Joseki, where your opponent approaches and then you play the attachment. And I can tell you 15 years ago when I was studying Go, first of all, my teacher said that, oh, attachment is always, it's like a really not cool move. Like my teacher would say that this is like a really lame move. Uh, Usually not recommended. And then the Joseki is going to be something like this, where you attach and then you hane. That's a typical move. And then after you get hane, black extends to 9. And then here, white has a cutting point. White extends to 10 to efficiently defend her cutting point. And then black blocks, defends the corner. And then here, white plays an extension. And then if you run the AI analysis in this situation, it is indeed quite even for both sides. It's quite even, but it's not. These moves are definitely not recommended by AI at all. So I just want to say, in the past, human beings have always thought that, you play the attachment whenever there's like, you want to build the right side, right? It's quite an obvious move. But AI would show that it's a little more complicated than that. So let's look at, if we were to play this most basic sequence, right now, AI would recommend white to just extend and then play a knight's move. And then what these moves are saying is that, oh, black is now going to take the right side and possibly using this side extension stone to some extent to secure this territory, whereas white is building, the lower side influence and possibly an influence that would even help build the left side. So usually in the early on in the game, allowing your opponent to take so much influence all the way up to like the middle of the board, it's not that it's not super efficient for black to play like this. And not to mention there are actually invasion points within black's territory, so black's territory still at least owes a move to be completed. So so that's one huge difference between human and AI. Humans has always played this extension because we always wanted to make a base, create stability for our group, whereas AI would recommend, look at the bigger picture. You can build a lot more influence that will control the, a lot more space, be it for the left side of the board or the bottom side of the board. So that's one huge difference between the human understanding and the AI's understanding. And I don't want to completely discount the human's way of playing, because this extension is actually quite important. For example, if white omits that extension and plays a tenuki elsewhere, then here, locally speaking, this pincer is the shape move to attack this white group. And here white doesn't have really good eye shape and will struggle to run out. Basically, white will try to run out, and when black hanes, white actually was, there will be some challenges to play this hane because there's a risk of getting cut. So this means at this point, if white has to play a really ugly empty triangle, then here, here black can just defend. And then here you can see that white is already really inefficient. Here white bends, and here sometimes there's a Tetsuji that you can play to peep here. But right now, even something like this is good enough. And you can see that this white dragon, it's not, first of all, it's baseless. And second of all, it's not doing much at all. It's not making points. It's not creating great influence. And black has a base here. Black's corner is defended. So this result is not good for white, and therefore that kind of explains the urgency uh, to do something to this group to strengthen it. And in the past, what human beings came up with was this extension, but AI was recommending, take the influence instead. So that's one huge difference. And if we take a step back, at this point, AI does not even recommend this extension. It prefers other moves. But so before I get into the AI recommended move, I want to talk about this attachment real quick, because I've been playing Go online recently, and I've met quite a few Go players would prefer playing the 1-3 these moves, and I dare say that 80% of the time 1-3 is wrong, because what 1-3 has gained white compared to the previous variation. Compared to this, the one thing that white can be proud of is endgame. White probably got an extra 2 points and reducing black an extra 2 points. So it's a territorial gain. But what white has this lost is the agi to push and cut black. Previously, let's go back. So previously, there's always this agi of potentially push and cut, right? And not to mention, since black stones are high on the fourth line, there's always a potential to invade here. And in the future, white would get like a knight's move to make an eye down here. So there's more room for invasion. But if white plays like this, then where's black's invasion point? Where's white's invasion point? If white plays like this, I think black can just cover and kill this thing. So white lost a really good invasion point, and there's also no push and cut aji here because you just get captured. So 1-3 is usually wrong, and I think some Go players tend to play 1-3 because they get confused with the double approach Joseki. Double approach as in something like this. Yeah, this double approach Joseki, this is when AI recommends this kind of move. But this is okay because black is after you double approach and play like this, you're actually aiming a push and cut. It works here. And it's not like black was trying to invade here. I mean, black already has a stone here. It's all about black trying to attack white's corner. So some people were confused between the attachment Joseki versus the double approach Joseki. So that's something to be mindful of. That is, most of the time, you don't want to play like this. And in fact, the recommended way of playing is this diagonal move. So this diagonal move is quite interesting. It's aiming at, well, if black Tanukis, white is certainly aiming at either invading the corner or just pushing up and expanding the bottom side influence, the potential to get the bottom side. So, oh, sorry. Given that white has either these two good points, black should basically take either one of these. And usually in the beginning, you would want to defend the corner. And then now, white pushes up again, black Kanes, and then white now has a really nice asking move. This is like aiming to cut black, right? I mean, if black does not respond, white can just cut right here, and then the 3-3 stone will basically die. So here, say if oops, say here if black defends like this, then white can start building a territory. And here, there's a problem that is white's, the lower side is also pretty big. And what it's hard to say that this move is being fully utilized to its best extent. So yeah, this I think this is playable, but white is also being quite efficient at the lower side right here. And here, if black is greedy in terms of the territory, so this is like a super greedy move, taking all these territory, then when white hane is, note that black cannot double hane, because there's a really, really simple way of playing. Yeah, there's this double atari. Even though black can capture stone, white can just atari, and then black cannot connect, right? Black cannot connect. So I mean, yeah. So this is why this this diagonal move is a pretty nice asking move. And here we talked about how black defends here or extends here. If black plays the tari, then I'd say this. Oh, sorry. This is probably the worst result for black, because black has to defend either one of the cutting points anyway, and now white has a really nice potential push and cut. It would be a really difficult situation for yeah, basically too many cutting points for black. It's not great. So sorry. So back to here. Here, black's best response is this 3-3. And when white pushes up and white asks black how he would defend, and then both sides can, start building their own territory. This would be like a very typical response for both sides. And any questions so far? Nope. Okay. Let's look at, so I can tell you that AI, if we take a step back, at this point, AI actually does not recommend the attachment. And the main reason is that no matter what black plays, white will always get this push, and then she would be able to develop the lower side well. So basically, the argument is that as black gets some territory on the right side, white is also rapidly, getting an influence or potential territory at the lower side, and that result is basically a little good for white, too good for white. So let's look at a scenario in which AI actually recommends the attachment, and say this approach happened, but this time black invaded the 3-3. Say white blocked this side just because she thinks that this side has more potential, more space, and let's just play out a really simple 3-3 invasion Joseki. And it's right now that black that AI recommends this attachment. So if we're wondering, oh, what's so different about, what's so special about this 3-3 invasion that makes this attachment actually good for black, then let's look at this again. So here, let's say we play something really, really simple. Let's just play like a double hane and just something like this. Then here we realize that white actually owes a move to secure territory here, you know? And here, black already took out the corner. There's always potential for black to further reduce white's points here. And black already got a lot of influence on the right side already. So basically, what happened here is that white cannot very efficiently make territory here. Usually, when you see like a wall facing another wall and the enclosed space is very narrow, usually that's just a sign of like over concentration or just being really really inefficient. Um, so that is this is basically not very good for white. So in general, AI would prefer playing this attachment when, first of all, you actually have some potential to develop on your side, on your side of the board. Second of all, is that when it is not easy for white to um, be efficient in terms of gaining territory on her side of the board. So if you meet those two conditions, that is a really good reason to start this attachment Joseki. Okay, so that's like probably the most important point of the lecture. So remember that. And later on, we will look at some pro game examples, and yeah, we'll get to understand how this is applied in a real game situation. So here we talked about how white is going to get a slightly an inferior result if she keeps playing around here, because she cannot very efficiently gain a lot of territory or good influence around this lower side of the board. So it's important to understand what are some counter attacks that white can play. So the first one is the 3/3 invasion. So instead of doing anything here at all, white just says, okay, you know what? I'm just going to treat these two stones lightly. I am willing to potentially give them up. And I look forward to living in your corner. So this is a really interesting result. In fact, in the past, human beings have played like this before. And we have always we have always played the knight's move. I know some people have played the extension as well, but this is usually bad because black can still completely enclose the corner and white still needs to live in Gote. And when white plays this attachment, I think black can either choose between these two, and either way, black is if black plays like this, black has still a really really good influence on the outside, and white's corner is just very small. Or if black plays like this, then obviously this has become like a fight. White's not alive. White has to run out. Yeah. So usually this extension is it's a pretty bad move. And in the past, people have played a knight's move. And this is not preferred by AI for two reasons. First of all is that black can approach from this side and white's corner is still not alive. If white really needs to live, she might need to consider a move of this kind, which is quite painful. It's again living in a small corner, and black can already tenuki play elsewhere. And if white tries to run out, it's at, I'd say the white's moves running out isn't particularly helpful because right now white is just weak, and yeah, white has potentially one eye because white would need to play this to make one eye, but that's just one eye. This yeah, white should not play like this because she'll be in a lot of danger if black tries to enclose. But basically being eyeless and having a weak group running is very, very bad for white. Yeah, if you're going to invade 3-3, at least live with points, not just run out without eyes. Yeah, so I would recommend playing like this, but as you can see, this move has become like a diagonal move, which is really inefficient, which is quite painful for white. So yeah, the knight's move was the move that humans have played a lot in the past, but we don't play that anymore because AI suggested that we can play the large knight's move. Yeah, so the large knight's move seems really weak, right? The connection is really weak, but it's okay. It's gonna be okay. So let's look at the most obvious cut, like this. So I can tell you right away, yeah, this is already too good for white because white Sente captured a stone. Basically, white kind of Sente invaded in black's territory, and black only like captured a very small corner. I mean, he got some influence, but his influence is facing the useless side of the board. This is the area that's not very important. So this is not a great result for black. And if black tries to cut white like this, then it gets a little trickier, but white is still going to be fine. So here, I do want to point out that white cannot just extend, and yeah, if this were to happen, then you can already count the liberties 1, 2, 3 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. So white is not doing so great. Yeah, most likely we'll lose the semi. So here, what white needs to do to solve this problem is to play like this. Basically, right now, the connection underneath and cut becomes miai, right? Black can only play on either side. So say black defends here, then here white just, everything is connected, and black has a really ugly empty triangle right here. Yeah, so this result is really bad for black because black completely lost the entire corner. And just so that you know that this stone is still not dead. There's still some potential for for an invasion, like here locally later on. So this is really, and yeah, not to mention black has a cutting point, which means that white might get a peep later on black's wall. So this result is very uncomfortable for black. So that's really important. If you ever play the large knight's move, you always need to know how to defend against this kind of disconnection. Yeah, you push once, then you fill here, then these two cuts become miai. Okay. So yeah, so when black blocks here, 1, 2, yeah, it's white's turn. So a lot of the times, if white doesn't like the aji, she can spend a move to defend. And now you can see that the stone is in a much better position than the previous knight's move, right? If previously you have played knights, well, I guess, yeah, this stone is in a very efficient position in terms of, expanding the corner's territory. Yeah. So, Oh, it was black's turn.
Mhm.
My bad. So what I actually meant to say is when black captures, white can always spend a move and defend the corner. Yeah. Or if black tanukis place elsewhere, it's yeah. I guess spending a move in the corner does get rid of the bad achi. And here, black, other than capturing this one stone, there are other ways to make shape. And this is one of the ways where black attaches, white hanes, and black can extend. And here, white has a really severe weakness, that is this peep. Um, if white doesn't do anything, if white thinks that, oh, my corner's alive, well, actually, well, yeah. If white tanukis, then yeah, this peep will just immediately get white killed because this stone is dead. The second line stone is dead. So basically, white definitely owes a move, and white can now extend to live. And black Sente basically pushed white down to a second line and has connected all of his stones from here all the way to his corner. So basically, he's Sente build influence, and now black should just Tenuki and start playing elsewhere. So this is a playable pattern for both sides. Yeah. So I guess here I do want to point something out, that is after black defends, if white Tenukis, there's still some aji here. So previously we talked about how, previously white can just play like this, right? And it was aiming at connection, but now black has this Atari. There's obviously no connection that white can run to. But it turns out white can still play like this, as in white can still continue with a cut variation instead. So here, when black extends, white can just play an Atari, and here black cannot save the stone anymore, or if he does, then white can just Atari from this side. And basically, black is gonna have trouble saving these two stones. Let's see. If black tries to extend, then I think white can just kind of capture and run out. Oh, sorry. That was a bad idea. Yeah. So there's like a nice little Tetsuji to run out your, sorry. Yeah, run out your stones. Yeah, where you play the one space jump, and then you drive your opponent all the way down to second line, and then you can just run out. So, and if black plays like this, then obviously black two stones are just dead. So basically at this point, what black can do, the only thing that he can really do is to just, take out the entire corner. But white's group is not that weak, right? I mean, white can still kind of live on the side. So I say this is still playable. This is playable for white. Yeah. But it's important to know that this large knight's move, it has a lot of aji, but yeah, white just needs to know the right way to deal with this kind of cut in order to play the large knight's move. Okay. So yeah, so this is the really cool AI recommended large knight's move. And let's move on to the next pattern. Do you guys have any questions so far? Nope. Okay. So, another way to counter black's attachment So it's instead of playing the wedge, instead of playing the hane, white can actually consider the wedge. And here, black obviously would want to, connect his stones and build the influence. And then now, typically, white would play the extension, and then black would cut to make white over-concentrated. So let's see what's going to happen here. White obviously wants to capture black stones, but white also wants to play some really big corner endgame moves while capturing the black stones. If white just captures like this, then black gets a really nice double hane. Black still maintains the corner, so this result is really annoying. Yeah, it's not satisfactory for white. So what white wants to do to improve her position is to play the Atari first, and then now you see white got this extension in Sente, which is a pretty big endgame move, and then white comes back to capture 2 stones. Instead of blocking here, white can actually just connect here, and then here you can see how white killed these 2 stones and got really nice, secure some really nice side territory. But still, white's efficiency or white's stone is all over this side. Like the stones on the outside doesn't really gain much influence at all because she's like kind of all over concentrated on this side of the board. So while this is a playable way, there's a better way for white to play in this particular scenario. And it's kind of a risky way to play because it has to do with fighting black when he makes this cut. So AI in this case recommended this 3/3 invasion, which it looks like problematic because white has a lot of cutting points. But here, when black cuts, notice that the ladder is no good for black, right? And therefore, white can just play a tiger's mouth. And then here, you can tell that it's not a great idea for black to start this fight because white already has stones nearby. Yeah, even a really simple move like this it would be a difficult fight for black, and white has already successfully invaded the territory. So I think this is a really interesting pattern for white to play because it's kind of like, oh, I have a bunch of stones here. How do I best utilize my stones? And in this case, the answer is kind of is basically lure black into a fight that's disadvantageous for him, because right now black is in a really low position, and when white runs out, it also hurts black's influence or the development of his moyo. So basically, at this point, black should just stop, and he probably needs to tenuki and play elsewhere because the fight is not great locally. I do want to point out that when white plays this wedge, it's really important that the ladder has to be favorable, because if white can't ladder the stone, this wedge just doesn't work. Yeah, white probably doesn't want to play like this. Okay, and about ladders, here's another really important thing about something about the 3/3 invasion. That is, when white plays here, this 3/3 invasion, white actually has to consider the ladder again. For example, if say this was played, and say black got this exchange, and then he plays this attachment. If she tries to play this 3/3 invasion again, here we will run into a ladder problem. That is when black instead of blocking here, he can now choose to block here because the ladder is good for him. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this cut. And when black cuts, white has only two options for defending. Let's talk about this one. And here, black just ladders this stone. And it's quite painful because it's like white played a 3-3 invasion, but somehow made a cut exchange that allows black to just ladder the stone. So certainly this and that exchange is just very bad for white. White didn't need to make this exchange at all. So that's one thing. And here, if white defends like this instead, and is aiming at this push and cut, then black in this always has the option to save these two stones. In this case, because there's a side extension stone, black can always consider a Tari, Hane, and then a one space jump. And then there's no, basically white has to somehow fight black in this area of the board, which is not very advantageous for white because black already has some supporting stones here. And if you're wondering about the cut, yeah, the cut doesn't really work for white because when white saves this stone, black can just immediately squeeze and then yeah, white's going to die. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of ladders that we need to be mindful of when it comes to this this honey and 3-3 or the wedge, those patterns. So, okay, we got 20 minutes. Let's look at some pro games and see how pros have successfully used the attachment and messed up. Okay, let me turn on my Lizzie. Okay. Okay, let's look at the good ones first. Okay, so these are all more recent pro games, 2019, 2020. So people have already been exposed to AI and yeah, they've already started studying AI. So here, this is a really interesting attachment. So previously, the attachment that we talked about was, black always had like an extension stone. And then here, the left side is the side where white cannot efficiently make territory. So we cleared that criteria, that is indeed, because black has this second line stone. It basically effectively reduces white's potential to make territory. And you can actually kind of see from Katago's score estimate analysis. Indeed, there's not a whole lot of points that either black or white can make here. Yeah, so basically when white is going to have a really hard time making points in this, on her side of the board, I'd say that is probably one of the most important criteria in order to justify this attachment. And even though black does not have extension stone, black can, in this case, it was still good enough to attach just to make white into a inefficient position. And in the pro game, you can see how the pros think like, given that I cannot make points here, I might as well just invade the 3-3 directly. But I think that was a pretty significant mistake, because usually you would invade the 3-3 when there is a lot of value in destroying black's top side of the board. But in this case, it's not, right? Because white already has like a second line stone aiming here, ready to reduce black's territory. So in this case, AI would have recommended the, oh, well, in this case, the wedge, because of the ladder is favorable for white, as you can see. But in the pro game, let's look at what he did. So so basically white was trying to switch sides, but I don't think it was a great idea because even the top side of the board that uh, wasn't that super valuable to begin with, just because of the placements of white's second line stone here. So I thought, yeah, that was pretty interesting. And then after black got the tiger's mouth, black immediately played this diagonal move, which kind of builds up the potential to get the territory on the left side of the board. Um, yeah, so that was like a trade between the two. Let's look at a few more of these pro games. Okay. So here this is another kind of similar situation. Here, black again was at a slightly lower position. After a 3-3 invasion, black's position is always a little low on the third line. And here, white decided to play the attachment, and it was a good enough move because wherever black gets, it's probably limited to just this amount of territory, which is like maybe 18, maybe 20 points. And black is not going to be able to develop any sort of significant influence here. And the pros play all of these moves were actually recommended by AI. And here previously I talked about at this position, there are two key points. It's either the corner or the bend, as shown here from the AI analysis. And in this case, the human chose to play the bend, which is still pretty good. Basically, you're limiting all of your opponent's stones to play on one side of the board, kind of get them over concentrated, and then I bet white later on has to like develop the top side. Let's see what happens. Exactly. So white got the bend, and then white got this diagonal move to kind of maximize the potential to build the top side. So I think both sides, the professional players played pretty well, and I'd say they're heavily influenced by AI. Yeah, and let's look at this one. Okay, so this attachment is quite interesting because it's basically saying that, okay, if when white plays the knight's move, it's almost like a Sente threat against black's entire group at the top right corner, which means that white has plenty of potential to build the top side. And therefore, because white wants to maximize the potential of building the top side, white then decides to play this attachment, which is a pretty good move, as suggested by AI. And here I was surprised that the human played the extension move because, yeah, it's not nearly as flexible in terms of making eyes, or yeah, it's not a very flexible move for black. So yeah, black basically make this few exchanges, but it really helps white solidify the top side territory, and then he's pincering, hoping to counterattack white. But white's doing better in this case. So, and finally, okay, the attachment appeared here. So this kind of an attachment You know what? Let me play this out first. Yeah, because AI likes it when you send to make life. So now you can see Black's group is 100% live. But now you can really see this attachment. So this attachment it's kind of a little different from all the other attachments that we've seen, because White's entire group is not alive. Black's entire group is 100% alive, so he can go all out attacking this. So this attachment is actually a leaning attack slash, yeah, it's basically a leaning attack. If White plays Hane and yeah, basically whatever White plays on top, it's going to slowly hurt her entire dragon here. So now I guess now we have another reason to play the attachment. That is, if it's a good linear attack, yeah, just go ahead, attack that way. And let me show you if White plays like really simple and old traditional moves. After playing all of this, yep, and this cap, then Black has successfully, you know, completely secure all this territory, and White still has to somehow figure out how to live. And yeah, yeah, basically White is going to struggle really badly while living, and yeah, Black has already gained so much territory. So, okay. So this is the last of the successful pro games that has utilized the attachment. And then we're going to look at some bad ones. Okay. Okay, so this is a pretty good example of kind of what we gone over in a couple of minutes ago. That is, when White has a side extension, and basically when White wants to develop one side, and when your opponent is kind of inefficient or possibly going to become over concentrated, this is the right time to play the attachment. So here, whatever Black plays hit his territory, and well, he's not going to get much of an influence because all of his stones are kind of cluttered up in this area. It's not really facing outside or any sort of extension stone. So whatever Black plays, it's going to be, you know, limited to just this much value. Whereas whatever White plays, it's kind of aiming to expand the potential of the left side. And here, the pro, you know, obviously know that he's going to become over concentrated. That's why he played a 3/3 invasion. And yeah, and as you can see, the pros studied the AI moves, and he did play the large knights move. And it becomes like an exchange. And yeah, and right now, yeah, White decide to Tanuki. And you can see how AI actually recommends playing a move to get rid of all of the really bad Aji from the large knights move. Okay, so I hope these are pretty instructive and useful examples that we can all learn from. And now we're going to look at the not so good attachments from pros. Okay, so this attachment. So yeah. So here AI recommends like a knight's move as opposed to attachment. And the reason is that when White attaches, Black basically can build a really nice, basically Black can build a lot of potential from the left side. And usually if your opponent's potential is better than yours, you cannot afford to play the attachment. It's basically not satisfactory, not good enough for White. Instead, if White plays the knight's move, and if Black plays an extension, here you can see how AI is aiming at this invasion or that invasion. Basically, if your opponent has a lot of side potential, don't attach them because you're just going to help them build territory. You should play solid and then aim for an invasion later on. So that's yeah, AI's recommendation. And if you're wondering, oh, if black plays a large knight's move to get rid of that potential invasion point, then well, black is kind of opening up himself to another kind of invasion. So when your opponent doesn't have a good way to secure his territory in just one move, you can just play solid and then aim at an invasion later on. And in this case, playing the attachment wasn't good. Yeah, wasn't very good for white because black could have just expanded his lower side. But in the game, the pro decided to invade, so that wasn't a good judgment either. And finally, this is the last pro game with a suboptimal attachment. Okay. So here is quite interesting because white is this is from the 3-3 invasion pattern. Here is not recommended. Here AI actually prefers that black plays like the one space jump, and the reason is that black AI prefers that black aim at an invasion later on here. The invasion here is severe because white's entire group is not alive, right? So this is another thing that we need to be mindful of. When you play an attachment to your opponent, you're kind of giving your opponent some free moves to strengthen their group. And therefore, if you have the opportunity to invade and attack two groups at once, AI would prefer that you preserve that opportunity as opposed to playing the covering Joseki to attach, because now white is just going to secure territory and become strong, and it's not great for black. So yeah, that's all I have for today. Do you guys have any questions? No. Well, thank you for joining the lecture, and I hope you guys have a better appreciation for this attachment Joseki that my teacher said that is lame 15 years ago.
Thanks. I have one quick question.
Yeah.
Can black, so in the diagram that you have up,
Okay.
well, no, not that diagram. The after the attachment, is there any other second move besides the Hane there?
Oh yeah. Absolutely. So I think the wedge is the one that you can play if the ladder is good and if you don't value your bottoms, your left side at all. And previously we looked at how white has the option, if she has some supporting stones, she can consider a 3-3 invasion directly, or white can just, in this case, in this particular situation, white should just extend, and black, and then this is the Joseki pattern that we kind of covered.
Right. Sorry, I brain farted a bit.
Oh no. And there's actually a ton of variations in this Joseki. Like, but sometimes black can consider a double Hane. Yeah, it's actually quite complicated. Oh, and by the way, black can't even ladder the stone. If he has to play here locally, he actually has to like fight. So you can see how black and white completely trade sides, right? Like white just lived in black's corner, and then black kind of completely sealed white into this corner, but white still have some aji on the outside. So white so this is playable only if white thinks that the fight is going to be good for white. Otherwise, I'd say getting completely enclosed early on in the game is not, it's not a great idea. You basically completely lose control over the center influence, So Yeah. And